Hello everyone, and welcome once again to the Heir's Lair. I'm your host, Jonathan Taylor. In case the image quality and sound quality is a little bit different now, that's because my camera broke. Planned obsolescence strikes again. So now I'm stuck with filming on my cell phone. So if you get a little more background noise, sorry about that. I'll figure out how to get rid of it sometime later down the line. For now, let's get into the topic at hand. I've been on a reading slump this past week. Don't know why. So I thought, in order to jog the old creative inspiration, I would look through my old videos, my old reviews, see if there isn't something that will, spark something. Luckily enough, I did notice a thing. Namely, the fact that a relative majority of the books I've read and reviewed, and by that I mean around 40%, are romances, with about 3/4 of those being fantasy romances. And even though this technically makes the romance genre my most read and reviewed, none of the 7 books I've up until now given my highest rating to are romance books. There are a few that have come close and have received my second highest rating, but none that really managed to get over that top. That really managed to distinguish themselves by being as memorable as they really could be. Now, I could say that is simply because romance isn't really my genre, but to be honest, that's kind of a cop-out answer. I already read more genre than more of romance than of anything else. So that would not be the case if it weren't my genre. So what is it about the romance books I've read so far that doesn't really click with me? Or put another way, what would it take for a romance book to receive my highest rating? In order to answer that question, I thought I would look through the criteria I typically use when it comes to reviewing a book, looking at the highest rated books so far, and also look at the romance books that have come closest to that highest rating, and figure out what it would take for some other romance book to be within that top echelon. If any of you, by the end of this video, recognize any potential book as actually fitting this description, then please feel free to recommend it to me. I'm going to start this video by talking about what I typically talk about, namely the plot. You might have been able to figure out that when it comes to plotting, I typically enjoy books that have some twists and turns within their plot. Books that make me wonder, what kind of journey it will, they will take their readers as I am reading them. Books that in general manage to surprise me with, not necessarily with the contents of the story, but more with how they manage to tell them. Some of you might right now be thinking that disqualifies romances right off the bat, because the endpoint of a romance is always that the main couple, or the main romantic unit, if I am to be inclusive of polyamorous relationships, should end up together. To those people, I say, 1. Romance doesn't necessarily mean that the romantic unit has to end up together. That is the most common ending, but other endings can also happen, especially if they are more plausible, or if they fit better within the theme that the book is trying to establish. More on that later. And 2, the plot isn't about the ending. The plot is about the journey the book takes in order to reach that ending. And in fact, you can very much have a compelling plot even if the ending is a little bit more ambiguous. Or if the ending is not as satisfactory as it could be. And in fact, I could think of a few of my of the first books I've given my highest rating that don't necessarily have great endings, but that have amazing plots, and that have managed to attract me through the various sinews that the various journeys that the plot took me upon, and by looking at all the elements that are part of the story and how they fit together. The important thing to note here is that any kind of twist that the plot brings needs to be plausible within the setting as it is presented. Also, the plot doesn't necessarily have to be intricate or anything like that. It can be simple enough to follow, but in which case I would recommend that the way it is presented be played around with. Like introduce either you can tell it through multiple perspectives or through multiple means, such as official reports, diary entries, letters, stuff like that. What would be most helpful with these asides and these fresh perspectives is if they are used to either introduce new characters, start or solve a side story, or in some ways change the dynamic of the main story as a whole. But then again, all this plot talk is really just the filling. The actual core of a romance consists within its cast of characters. Now, ideally, you'd want all characters of a story to be well developed and come across as fully realized people that you could plausibly encounter in real life. However, I realize that is not always possible, because cool as it might be for each of your characters to have 3 pages of backstory that you manage to integrate somehow within your plot, I recognize that can't always work. So instead of mandating that, I will recommend a minimum, and that minimum consists of 1. Giving each character enough distinctive traits to where I can tell them apart within the larger cast, and those traits can be physical, they can be personality related, or they can be in some ways backstory related. And 2, their actions have to in some way be informed by what it is that is already established about them. So, for example, you wouldn't expect a suffragette to oppose a woman who any community giving women the right to vote, that kind of thing. When it comes to the actual main characters, i.e. the people who are involved within the romance, it's a little bit more complicated. It's not enough for them to be sufficiently well developed. They also have to work well together. They have to synergize. Their faults have to cancel each other out, and their strengths need to amplify each other in some way. And that is tied within their character arcs. Speaking of character arcs, I would like to point out here that the best romances, or really the best stories of any genre, are characterized by the fact that they are not just romances, or maybe they're not even primarily romances. Rather, they use the trappings of the romance genre in order to make a bigger point, in order to weave a larger story within the narrative elements that they are playing with. And it is within that framework that your characters also have to find themselves. They have to represent some kind of dichotomy, some kind of conflict, or some kind of struggle that mirrors what's going on within within a larger society, and what they bring out of each other has to in some way reflect those dynamics. A great example of that actually is on Stranger Tides, which I assume the iCard will go here. or here. I'm listening here. Anyway. The point is, in On Stranger Tides, the main character, because of all the crap she's been through, has to overcome a lot of learned helplessness, because throughout her life she's learned that anything she tries to do in order to overcome her position might might backfire on her. So she doesn't. So for most times she doesn't even try. It is only when she meets her love interest that who actually shows her enough trust to where she can actually try to be who she really is, that she actually sets out to change her standing and change and improve her her actual standing. That being said, it's it's not really enough to have a good character arc and a strong plot, or for any of those to be strong particularly. You also need something a little bit extra. You also need solid world building, or a solid presentation of the setting. And by that I mean that the world itself also has to mirror the struggle or the conflict that is woven within the plot and within the plot beats themselves. Rosalind Breyer does a great job at weaving that conflict. Not that conflict. At weaving the world building within the descriptions of her characters, to the point where they both are outgrowths of it and they are the living embodiments of it. As in she's very adept at showcasing the reciprocal influence that these factors have. Also, for all its faults, I do have to mention the direwolf duology here, because the way it manages to present its setting is very well done, not just in terms of how it presents the actual romance plot that it has going on, but also in how it frames its larger plot about war and about survival and about resistance. So yeah, in conclusion, I am looking for a story that is able to juggle complex themes with a setting that is obviously influenced by those themes, within which characters who logically derive from their setting exist and who manage to in some way either mirror or overcome some potential aspect or dynamic of the world they are within. If any of you know of any book like this, then please let me know. And yeah, that was my video. Thank you for your attention. If you enjoyed it, new frame and all that, well then please let me know. Please leave this video a like, maybe even share it wherever you think other people will like it as well. If there is anything you'd like to add, that's what the comment section is for. And if you want to see when my next video gets released, well then please subscribe. And ideally also ring the bell or do whatever else YouTube will ask of you in order to keep you notified. My own book, Heir to the Empire Next Generation, is available at most major book retailers under a massive link in the description down below. Right past all of my social media links, which I also suggest you check out should you choose to. You'll also find my Patreon link down there, in case you want to support me more directly, for example, so I can buy a new camera. And maybe you can also receive perks such as early access to videos as well as scripts, both from this channel and from my second channel. Until next time, I am Jonathan Taylor, and this has been the Heir's Lair.